Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the TJ Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the TJ Jackson Foundation. My name is TJ Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, Taj Jackson.
What's going on, T?
What is up, Taj?
Not a mucho.
We are live, of course, on Facebook and YouTube for another episode of The Power of Love. But you may be listening to us via a podcast. Yes, that is correct. We stream all of our episodes, or we should say we upload all of our episodes on all the major podcast platforms so that you can stream and listen to our show whenever you want. If you are a podcast listener and you didn't know that we were podcasting, please check it out. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. Why am I saying all this? Is because, by the way, we have 29.7 thousand downloads from the podcast.
Nice.
So that's an incredible number. 29.7. We have a goal of hitting 30,000. So we encourage anyone who is just discovering us or who may be listening to us always through Facebook or YouTube to also consider downloading a podcast. It helps push our content up and help others who may need the content find it. So please, again, check out the podcast. Taj Jackson, before I start asking you how your week is, I'm going to go through the disclaimer real quick. It's a disclaimer we do every single show, and that is simply that we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who've experienced loss in our lives. We've been impacted by it, and we have learned from it. And we like to share our opinions in an attempt to help you get through whatever it is you may be going through, saying that if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please do not just rely on us. So, Taj, before I get to your week, I am going to share some news. One of my favorite bands of all time, being Fleetwood Mac. I was about to say, it looks like your screen is frozen, but you're just looking down. I hope you're doing research and not ignoring.
I'm doing research, okay. And I'm appalled that you would think otherwise.
You get a pass. But what I was saying is one of my favorite bands would be Fleetwood Mac. And we learned just a couple hours ago, we lost Christine McVie, one of the female lead singers to the wonderful, amazing Fleetwood Mac. And we just want to send our love and condolences, our light, our strength to the Fleetwood Mac family, to Christine's family, to all the fans around the world. A legend was lost today, and she will always live on through her music. And anything else you want to add to that, Taj, before we get on with other things?
No, I mean, they're Iron Cara died.
Yeah, thank you, Taj.
From Flash Dance fame, but she's also been part of people's childhood. She was on TV shows growing up, and I'm doing the segue because I was trying to do the research because I wasn't a Power Ranger.
Yeah.
But
was that, Taj? When was that? That was over a week ago, though, right?
That was over a week ago, but we never mentioned it because I don't think we were off a week. And so, but a lot of childhood important people in your lives, you know, they're gone, and then all of a sudden, and we're probably missing some too. That it stings in a way because it hits you from a side that you don't even realize that the impact that these people do in your lives. I was kind of, when the Power Ranger, because I didn't get into Power Ranger, I missed that boat in that way. I was a little too old at a point, but I was also into my own, you know, anime and Japanese stuff as well. But I know what that meant to a lot of people in that way. And supposedly he was one of those guys that was very warming at conventions when fans would meet him and all that stuff. And so, and I'm apologizing because I don't even know his name because I wasn't, I didn't know the show at all. I've not seen one Power Ranger show. Yeah. So you guys might want to help me out on that. But just hearing about him being, you know, an incredible person in terms of fandom and stuff like that. Yeah.
You know what it is, Taj? What I'd like to highlight is, in a way, the White Power Ranger. Is that right?
I think it is. Well, Jason David Frank. Thank you very much, Professor.
Did that just pop up?
Yeah, it just popped up, and yeah, I think it was. Well, I think he was both. He was at one point green, and then he turned into the White Power Ranger.
Well, you know what it is.
I don't know anything about Power Rangers, so I'm not even going to keep talking.
First of all, Tiffany, you're 100% right. Taj, you strike us as the type that would like
it's right up my wheelhouse, and that's why I'm embarrassed, because Power Rangers would have been. I think I was I was the 3T touring and stuff like that. That's why we missed the boat.
You know what it is, though. What the point I wanted to make was, in my opinion, Jason was one of the first. Not first, but he was a big loss to a younger generation. Yeah. You know, we've dealt with the loss of people in our generation and in our age, but Jason, to me, was for those, like, if you're 20 and early 30s, you know exactly the Power Rangers, and you grew up with it.
Yeah.
And it's your first, for some of you, it's your first introduction to a serious loss, you know, and it's all around hard. Losing a loved one, losing someone you grew up with, losing a celebrity that you love, you know, whether it's Irene, Jason, or Christine. It's never easy, and it just reminds us of the fragility of life. So, you know, that's one reason why I've always felt happiness and blessed to do these shows with you and Terrell and the whole foundation, is because we're trying to make it easier to open these conversations and to help people be prepared for when these losses happen. Because as we get older, the losses will be happening more and more frequently. And it's just the way it is. And I truly feel if you're better prepared to handle it, the better prepared you will be to continue on in life in a very positive and upbeat way.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. I do want to give a quick shout out to Lala Chan for the super chat, who says, I would like to dedicate my contribution to Jason David Frank, aka the White Ranger from Power Rangers. He was loved by so many and changed a lot of lives. May the power protect him always. That's beautiful. And here's the thing, Lala Chen, you had that super chat so long ago, and I started so I wouldn't forget it, but I didn't see what it was because I like to see it live for the first time. But I should have just looked at your super chat. And Jennifer says we lost him to suicide, which is a whole nother topic, a whole nother tragedy in its own, is that we have to make sure we're listening to each other and respecting what others are going through, and remember to be kind. You know, we never know what people are going through. And if we could just spread more kindness in the world, I think we do a lot of people service, and a lot of families, you know, brighten a lot of people's worlds up. So always spread kindness, you guys. It's the best way to go about life. Taj, anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, I just wanted to highlight those two because that's what I was doing the research on, was trying to find the in terms of, because we were off last week, so just, you know, when two weeks happen, it's kind of feels like you have to catch up and stuff like that.
2K Demic says we lost Jason David to suicide, and I recently lost my 21-year-old brother to him unexpectedly taking his own life. We were just laughing and giving him love with him the night before he did it. 2K goes on to say suicide is a really deep and multi-layered topic. It is truly hard to understand why my brother did it. It's just, first of all, love, light, all of that to you and your family. 2K, it's you can never be prepared for this. You know, you can never be prepared, and I hope you all find that light, that strength to live life as greatly as you can, in honor and paying tribute to your brother. So sorry for your loss, and just wanted to share some love to you.
Good call, yeah.
Oh, that's really tough. Sending you love, 2K.
Yeah.
Okay, Taj, anything else we need to discuss before we go into our planned show?
Not that I know of. Oh, look, Thriller was released today. I think some people would want to know that iconic album 40 years ago was released.
Today's the day, huh?
Today is the exact day. So November 30th, 40 years ago.
There's a couple of things that we talked about the downloads. We're very close at downloads, but another thing we're close at is the official Facebook group. We have 476 members, and our goal is to get to 500 members.
That is so close. Come on, we can do it.
It is. So if you are a Facebook user and you have not joined our Facebook group, the DD Jackson Foundation official Facebook group, please think about doing so. It's a place where you can open up. It's a place where you can get support. There's no judging going on. It's just love and support. And we're really trying to build a community of being there for each other, much like it is in these comment sections during our lives. You can continue on these conversations. You can talk about different things, all in this Facebook group. It's a place where people are going to be understanding of helping each other. And I encourage everyone to join the Facebook group.
And if you know someone that would benefit from it as well, spread the word.
Taj, one more thing we need to talk about is Amazon Smile. You can support DDJF while you shop simply by going to Amazon.com. And I think there may be no. I was looking to see if there was an overlay, but there's not. But simply go to Amazon.com, everyone, and go to Google Amazon Smile, and then from there you could select the DD Jackson Foundation as the foundation you want to give to. And by doing so, as long as you click the Amazon Smile tab before you go shopping on Amazon.com, all of your purchase, there's a percentage, a small percentage, but it's a percentage that Amazon will donate on your behalf to the foundation. It's no cost to you. You're not paying anything extra. It's just that instead of Amazon keeping 100% of the gross receipts that they would receive, they donate a portion of it to the foundations and to other charities. So hopefully you will select DD Jackson Foundation, but if there's another cause dear to your heart, we encourage you to select them. Yeah. I think it's a brilliant, great thing that Amazon does. And we just want to make sure we're doing our part in making sure the world knows about Amazon Smile.
Exactly. And you can bookmark it too, so that it's easier just to click on the link.
Good call. That's what you have, right? A bookmark?
Yeah, 100% have a bookmark. That's what I have to find it. Yeah, it's just so that it just makes it simple. It's like
and what Taj is basically saying is on your toolbar on your browser, you could bookmark the Amazon Smile link, because you do have to click the Amazon Smile link. Nothing changes. The rest of your experience doesn't change. You'll just see an Amazon Smile little logo on the top left that ensures any purchase is made go to the charity. But your whole experience on Amazon is the same. You just have to click and start your process through this Amazon Smile link. Yep. It's all very simple. I promise it's not too confusing. Once you get it once, you have it for life. And it's very helpful to charities and foundations like ours.
Yep.
Taj, are we ready to go into our topic?
Let's do it.
That was a longer intro than we normally do.
Yes.
But it was an important one. So on today's episode of the Power of Love Show, we will be reading through an essay written by San Fransisco freelance journalist Katie Reilly. She writes for Vox.com, and I should say it this way. The article that she wrote for Vox.com is entitled How to Handle an Overload of Grief. Almost like what we're going through now with all the celebrities that are passing, and a lot of COVID passings, and just a lot of deaths in a variety of ways. There's a lot of loss that's going on. So this is an article that we felt was timely and one we wanted to share. The author of this essay, again, Katie, she lost her parents to ALS and cancer within years of each other when she was in her late 20s. And this essay details the topic of cumulative grief and how to handle an overload of grief. We will link the article in the show notes for anyone who would like to read it or share it with someone who you feel may benefit from reading it. So, Taj, question for you. Have you ever heard of the term cumulative grief?
No, I've not. I can imagine what it is, but I've never heard of that term.
Okay. So without further ado, let's dive into Katie's essay and learn more about cumulative grief and how to handle an overload of grief. Another question, Taj, did you know that a prior history of grief can affect the current grieving process? One study found people who lost more than one person in a short time still grieved one loss at a time, and that multiple losses affected various aspects of the bereaved individual's life, including their health, job, and marriage. This mental health phenomenon is often referred to as cumulative grief. The author of this essay, again, Katie Reilly, spoke to 5 grief experts about cumulative grief and how to understand and manage the feelings that may arise from it. So we're going to begin with the main question you may be asking. What is cumulative grief?
Yes.
Taj, do you want to give a stab at what why can't I say this word? Cumulative grief.
There you go. It says there.
Yeah, it's a challenging word, but it's a real word. So, Taj, what is cumulative grief?
If I take a stab at it, I'm not looking at what you're looking at right now, but I would say it's grief that stacks one on top of the other in terms of you, before you've not even fully healed, because you never fully heal, but before you've gotten over that hill of the first grief, another big grief equally as important hits you and adds on, compounds in that way. And from what kind of cheating from what you just said in terms of it affects your life in a different way than other grief would. In that.
Yeah. So it sounds good to me, Todd. You know me, I'm always going to blast you if I can, but
yeah.
I'll take that response. All right. Well, the technical term of cumulative grief is the experience of multiple losses. The challenging aspects of grief can be exacerbated with each new loss, according to Litsa Williams, a licensed social worker and co-author of What's Your Grief? Lists to help you through any loss, which can lead to fatigue and overwhelm. There is the emotional piece, but also the other stressors, such as coping with the practicalities of settling an estate, sorting through belongings, family conflicts, and financial strains. It can be hard to face a new loss when you feel like you're starting at half capacity. Sometimes after multiple losses, support systems are less engaged than they previously were. An additional loss can make a person feel like they need more support at a time when the support system is weaker than it previously was. Support system burnout is a real factor. With the first loss or first couple of losses, a person may have received a lot of support from friends and family. But unfortunately, with multiple losses stacking up, support systems can start to become less engaged, which is understandable and which is real. So while the term cumulative grief often refers to deaths that occur in rapid succession, that time frame isn't an essential component. The term is most often applied to losses in a short amount of time, but losses over any period of time can result in cumulative grief. The close succession of losses can increase feelings of overwhelm, but the timing is less relevant because grief is a lifelong journey. Yeah. I love that response. I think it's very powerful phrase. I think I love this correction because when we hear the term cumulative grief, the instincts are to think there's succession grief, that it happens one after the other. But like you mentioned, Taj, grief isn't something you get over. It's a lifelong kind of journey. Yeah. I almost said a lifelong sentence, but that's too dark. But it's a lifelong journey. And cumulative grief can add on. And as I earlier said, whether it's financial strains, whether it's estate planning, whether it's moving, whether it's job situation, there's so many factors that go into a sudden loss that and it can take time. It could be spread out. We always talk about how the support system is usually quite strong within the first couple of months of someone losing someone, but in time that support system dissipates and it fades away, which is understandable. People go back to their lives and their worlds, and sometimes it can left you as the griever feeling alone and weak and not burnt out, but really without any energy. So if another loss hits you at that point, you're not really in the best shape or best capacity to fight it and to learn how to deal with it. So cumulative grief is a very important thing, and it's an important thing to understand and respect. Over lifetime, because cumulative grief is cumulative over lifetime because we grieve for our entire lives, as Taj mentioned. The intensity and impact of that grief changes over time, but we still grieve the death of those we love. Taj, anything else you want to say about cumulative grief before I get on to the next topic?
No, it's a very fascinating.
Did you ever think about cumulative grief?
Not really, because I think grief in itself is just it's such a complicated term anyway. There's multiple aspects of it in terms of, everyone, as we've always said, deals with it differently. And so when it's now I'm trying to say cumulative. I can't even say that word right. So
now you know how
that's why I didn't tease you, by the way. If you know, I was very quiet because I didn't even know if I could say it. Yeah, we got to find an easier word for that too. When there's compounded grief in that way, I think it's like we do have to look at it different. And I like the idea of some people are already burnt out. It's almost like being having a gas tank that's already almost depleted, and it's got to make this now long journey again in that way. And so, yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it, because people, I think, mentally burn out anyway.
Yeah.
And now they got to go through that again. And I can understand why some people would check out. It's not the right thing to do, but they're like, I can't do this again.
Yeah. Angie says, I lost my father at age 14 and almost lost my mother at age 15, less than a year apart. Then I lost my oldest sister. That was cumulative grief for me. That absolutely is. And Angie, regardless of your current age, that is a lot to go through. And we are sending, again, strength, love, light your way during the challenging life you've had already. Very difficult. Very, very. I couldn't imagine.
When I read comments like that from people on the community, it really, I'm just amazed at everyone's strength. Like, in all honesty, it's just, it's amazing the people in this community and what a lot of them have had to go through, and they're fighting and they're being supportive to other people and everything like that. It really makes me proud of this community, but also I understand not what they're going through, but I understand why they're here.
And 2022 Music Guy says, I'm a dude and I faced a lot, I would say, cumulative grief. I lost one of my big sisters in March of this year. We're all dealing with losses and grief in our own ways. And we haven't made this a secret. We've always made this public that we wish there was more out there for people to help support each other. It's one of the reasons why we do this show, and it's the reason why there's that Facebook group, and why we encourage you to find your group if it's not our group. We just want the community and the world to find their source of comfort and support. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's well put, because it's just about finding that community, find that help. It doesn't have to be us. If you find someone else that works for you, it's just make sure you find that support in that way.
Good call. All right, Taj. So another important topic is that grief isn't limited to just human loss or death. This is another thing. I think a lot of times we in society just feel like if it's not death, then it doesn't really count or something like that. Anyways, cumulative grief, like grief in general, isn't limited to deaths. It involves all losses that impact someone. Cumulative grief can refer to the loss of a pet or symbolic loss, like the end of a relationship, loss of employment, a friendship ending, or family separation. A lot of people have a difficult time naming their losses because our society is geared toward grief being limited to just physical loss. And it really negates the impact of symbolic losses that we encounter on a daily basis. I think that statement is so profound and so important. I'm going to read it again. A lot of people have a difficult time naming their losses because our society is geared toward grief being limited to just physical loss, and it really negates the impact of symbolic losses that we can encounter on a daily basis. Secondary and tertiary losses can also result from a single incident. For example, think of the death of a person as the first circle, and the outer rings would be the secondary losses. If an individual's parents died, for example, or a parent died, for example, that would be a primary loss. The potential secondary losses could be financial instability due to the loss of parental income. These secondary losses can contribute to a feeling that everything has changed. It can be an overwhelming, disorienting experience that can also be invisible to others, which can cause an even larger sense of isolation in the griever. And again, another important point to bring out to light is that when we hear of a friend or someone who loses someone, we always just kind of limit it to the physical loss. But there's so much else that's being lost that I think one way we as supporters can help each other get through loss is by paying attention to that, is by mentioning, do you need help in this way? So many people are going to be there with flowers to say, I'm sorry for your loss, but it's not on our radars as much to ask, are you okay with work? How are you getting around? Do you need help around the house? Those kind of questions are very important. And if we ask those, we're opening up a possibility to help someone alleviate any possible cumulative grief they may be going through. Anything you want to add to that, Taj, before I get on to the next point?
Yeah, well, I experienced that last week or within this week time period. I had flooding in my storage area, and a lot of stuff got wet that I had for since I was a child, and so I thought of the not this topic because we hadn't, but I thought of the grief aspect of it, because the loss of losing something important to you that wasn't, as you said, a person or an animal or anything like that. It was papers. It was childhood stuff that, my first report card or this or that was soaked, and it was like, instead of, where the pen and you can see the marks, it was smeared, and certain things. It became more sentimental, obviously, because I knew my mom collected those things for me in the past, and I'd held on to them for close to over 40 years. And now, with one freak accident, a lot of that stuff was gone. And unfortunately, with our lives, we've had to deal with that before, so it wasn't as painful as it could have been, but it was something very sad to me in terms of that, because I felt like I'd held on to this stuff for so long in that way. But that's in itself, you've gone through so much grief that it's just, you almost have to revert back to, it's just papers at that point, because if you lose a person like we have, or persons like we have, I take the papers over, I would take the papers at any part of the day.
Yeah. Well put, Taj. Well said. So, as we know, we're going to go on to the next topic. As we know, or the next point, as we know, well, here at DDJF, grief can be a lifelong journey. A death can often trigger the feelings of prior losses. It's not uncommon that a new loss brings up old memories from a prior loss, but those feelings may surprise you. Many people believe that grief won't have a long-term effect. Well, I can tell you that is not the truth. According to Jana De Cristofaro of the Dougie Center, who you may remember was a previous Power of Love show guest, we believe that the work of grief just takes time. As time goes on, the impact will be less, but that's not true. Grief is a lifelong journey. We don't grieve a death and then lock it up in titanium, never to be gone back to again. We go with our assumption and our belief that grief is non-finite. It is something that we take with us for the rest of our lives. It becomes part of who we are. And every new loss or death that we experience is going to overlap and interweave with our previous losses. And there are lots of different ways that that can show up. Some grief therapist takes an inventory of a client's prior losses during counseling. This is called a loss history, and the practice of recording it enables both the client and counselor to better understand the person's prior experiences with grief, their coping styles, and to explore any new tools that they may need to manage their current experience. There is no expiration date on grief. A loss that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even 40 years ago can continue to affect us throughout the course of our lives, but can also affect the way that we come to future losses. So much important, in my opinion, important nuggets in here. And one thing I want to share for anyone who's dealing with grief, it's new to them. It's, they're feeling a sense of a large amount of grief and sorrow and loss and hopelessness. Although it sounds incredibly sad to hear that grief is a forever journey, grief is part of your forever life. I think our way of life, and we as in people, figure a way to find the joys of life again. I have to say I grieve and mourn my mother and uncle every single day. There's not a day that I don't think about either one of them. That doesn't mean that I cannot experience happiness and joy and the love of life. When loss happens, sure, the immediacy of it can make you feel a little down, can make you feel hopeless. But I encourage everyone to not give up, to stay with it, to try to understand what you are going through, to speak about it, to find a therapeutic way of dealing with it, whether it's talking to someone, talk to a stuffed animal, talk to a dog, draw it, paint it, write it, sing it, dance it. Any way you can get those feelings out will help you get through it in time. You will find a strong purpose to do what makes you feel good in life, and you'll find that happiness and joy of life. So again, this was a little not a tyrant, but a little segue from me to just make sure those who are out there that are maybe struggling with loss and struggling finding that inspiration to live the life they want, to remind you that life will get better. Life can get better and will get better. Taj, I'm sorry to take you on that segue, but I do want to know if there's anything you want to add to the point that grief can be a lifelong journey.
Oh, it's definitely a lifelong journey, I would say. In general, we're still learning in that way. I would, the only thing I would say is, when you've lost someone or something or anything like that that's substantial, it's always going to be part of you in that way. For me, the trick is not letting it define you. It's part of you, but it isn't who you are in that way. And you brought up great points about thinking of mom, Uncle Michael, and others every day in that way in terms of us. But there's days where we're super happy, and it's not like you have to always be mourning in that way. And there's a guilt to being extremely happy. And I think for me, in that way, I know Uncle Michael and Mom would have wanted that. They would have wanted us to be happy and smiling and enjoying our day and all that stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of re-emphasize that.
That's great. Angie says, I think all of us who has dealt with a loss is dealing with number 3. Exactly. It's a lifelong thing. And I like to think of myself as an optimist and a happy person. So the reason why I share that is just to encourage anyone who doesn't feel they're there or in that, or feel maybe hopeless that they can retain or eventually regain that happiness, to let them know it is possible and it is very doable. Just make sure you respect that you're going through a difficult time, and you respect your attempt. You respect your ability and try to attempt to heal yourself. That's the important thing. You can't just let your, there was, I don't know who it was, and I wish I did so I can be specific, but someone had lost something. I don't know if it's something or someone, but they gave themselves a deadline to feel incredibly sorrow and very sad and angry and hurt and negative. And then once that deadline hit, whether it was a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever that time was, they said, okay, enough of that. I got to find a way to rebuild. And I think that's an incredible tactic. If you find yourself continuously struggling with a recent loss, give yourself a realistic, solid time period to grieve it, to feel down, to feel sad. But once that point hits, really make that attempt that you're going to recontrol your life and do the best you can for yourself. I think that's an important mindset to have, and it's something that I know has helped millions around the world.
Yeah.
Taj, anything else you want to add?
There's a message or a comment from Dee's Tiny Kitchen that everyone is talking about in terms of focus on helping others. Your energy will help you heal others and also keep you busy, so as not to think too much and get sad. Listen to upbeat music, not sad songs. You'll be stronger. And I love a lot of that advice in that way, because helping others is what kind of has helped me get over in a way. I shouldn't say get over, but to heal more in terms of that. This podcast, just the charity aspect of it too, because you feel that you're doing something, you're being useful in a way, and you're turning that negative into a positive in that way. So I do agree with what Dee's Tiny Kitchen has said in that, and it does distract you as well, which is distraction is an important part of it, especially when all you're doing is thinking about the grief.
Well said, Taj. Well said. There is a fourth point that we want to discuss, and that is prioritizing taking care of yourself when you're grieving, as I was just talking about. If you're feeling overwhelmed by your grief, take the time and space you need to take care of yourself. Treat it like a psychological wound that deserves care and attention. The same tactics that work to help grieving individuals through one loss can be applied to multiple loss grief. Taking care of your physical body through nutrition, sleep, and movement, making time to journal or join a support group, and trying out remembrance activities like sorting through pictures or sharing stories are just some ways to help yourself work through your feelings. A counselor or therapist can also be an important part of the healing process. While support and community are extremely important when dealing with cumulative losses, sometimes you'll find that your support system isn't showing up for you or is stretched thin. Still, you should try to find independent and community-based ways to heal and seek support through a counselor or therapist. For the author of this essay, Katie Reilly, daily exercises and sleep helped her the most. And longer term, speaking with a therapist, writing about her experience, and opening up more to her closest friends have also made it more manageable, she says. With time, she learned to show herself more compassion when her grief arises. Taj, anything you want to say about that? Okay. I think that's all self-explanatory and all very important. I think the one thing I would like to add is that everyone is different. Everyone is unique. If sleeping isn't doing the trick for you, maybe going on a run or going on nature walks or waking up for sunsets or, maybe that will do it. Georgina says, I do photography to try to catch up the beautiful things in life. Maybe it's simple as that. I know gratitude plays a big role for myself. So there's a lot of different things you can do. You just have to give yourself the ability and try to seek what it is that can help you get through what it is you are going through.
Yeah. I think also giving yourself the permission. I think a lot of people, they feel like when they're grieving, they should be happy. And it's an interesting aspect of they shouldn't laugh at a joke. They're supposed to be miserable, and so it's giving yourself permission to be happy as well. And it's a stigma. It's not something that is just, there's a stigma to grief.
Carol says, I got bullied by a counselor. I started screaming and yelling. If you're ever getting bullied by a counselor, please find another source, another therapist, another counselor. You should never feel ashamed or smaller than going to your counselor.
Yeah, that's not a negative aspect to it.
Carrie says, this one is hard for me right now, but I'm trying to get back on track. And I wanted to highlight this, Carrie, because I appreciate the honesty, the openness.
Yep.
And I think it's important to highlight that this is not it's not an easy step. It takes time, and you can misstep. You may think it's this when it's not that. Or, going to the gym, or I should say, let's say running a marathon or running 5Ks may help you for a certain amount of time. And then, it may be something else that gets you through the next point or next phase. It's not something, a try one fit. What's this, try one size and fit for all? Is that the saying, Taj? I don't know. But basically what I'm trying to say is
one size fits all.
It's not a one size fit all. Everyone is different, and you can change in time. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that you're struggling finding this. What I love about your comment, Carrie, is that you are making the attempt to get back on track. You will get back on track. You just got to continuously make that attempt and be willing to try different things to help you get through it. I have even considered starting to paint. I haven't painted since I was 7 years old in school. But I know for many people, Howard Stern being one, that painting is therapeutic to him. He says, he started, I think, 5 or 10 years ago, and he says that's something he will do for life because it's really helped him get through his struggles. So find that thing, and it could come from left field. And it may not be something you've predicted, but find something that's going to help you get through your situation. Because the one thing I do feel, although grief is a lifelong journey, we learn to handle it as time goes on a little bit better. As time goes on, we learn to handle it a little bit better. At least I have in my experience. I'm not saying there's not going to be hard times, and not saying you're not going to be susceptible to some trips, but overall, the whole, I feel it does get easier with time. My take. Okay, Taj. Let's see what else. We have another point, and that is, I feel like we're getting through this kind of quickly. That is, don't judge yourself for your feelings of loss.
Yeah. Okay.
Multiple experiences of loss can be destabilizing and can lead to internal judgment. Each time we experience a new loss, we experience ourselves grieving in a new way, and that can lead to a judgment or criticism about how we have or haven't grieved in the past, or what does it mean about the person and what they meant to us in our lives if we are responding really differently. Sometimes we don't grieve someone the way we anticipate, which can be confusing. If you lost someone as a teenager and then lose someone later as an adult, those grief experiences likely won't be the same. As an adult, you've had years to mature, and it's easy to reflect on your younger self grieving with nostalgia or, at times, criticism. You may feel hit harder emotionally by the death of someone you had a complicated relationship with, or feel that you should grieve more for a current loss. These reactions are normal, and the more we understand that we can grieve each loss differently, the more we can give ourselves permission to do just that. Taj, this was a topic or a point you had just been talking about, and I'm going to give you the floor to just reiterate or re-say what you feel about this, because it's an important one.
I mean, it's all been said in that article, but I think for me, it's just, grief is such a big word in general, and it has so many, it's multifaceted. So you can't judge yourself on what you saw in a movie of how people grieved, or what the bar should be, or even someone that you helped go through the grieving process, and now you're going through it. Don't judge your experience of what they did with what you should do, because everyone's different. We've always said that with me and Terrell. We were under the same roof, had the same parents, had the same upbringing, but we dealt with grief completely differently in that way. And that, for me, taught me a lot about grief in general, that no matter. And I still learned in terms of with Terrell how he dealt with it, and was still holding on to certain things that I had let go of in that way, and it was very eye-opening, and that really made me aware that grief, you can carry it for a lifetime when I had it anymore. And so that's why I'm still learning, as you are too as well.
I wanted to ask you, Taj, what was it that helped you not carry it so much longer?
For me, the trick for me, and I've always said this, was when I turned the grief into a positive. When I said, I'm going to do something with my grief and I'm going to help others, and I'm also going to celebrate the person, and everything that they wanted me to do, I'm going to make sure I do for in their honor in that way. And so I felt strength as opposed to weakness in that way. I don't know. I mean, I was only 21-ish, or in the whatever. Yeah, 21, 22. I don't know.
21.
Yeah. So it's not like I was mature in that way to think that way. It's just it was a fight or flight thing. It's the only thing I knew. I would get buried in grief if I hadn't done that switch in that way. And I've always been an upbeat and positive person. So I thought that has to be my answer. It has to be why otherwise I will never be able to live the other way of knowing that my main compass / cheerleader / person that I knew, like, had my life kind of like my back in terms of my mom, my best friend, if the magnitude would have just swallowed me whole in that way.
Yeah. Angie says people grieve differently at different times because their life changes every day with different life experiences. Exactly. And I think that's important. An important point is that and then what you said earlier, Taj, I really liked about you can't judge yourself. Why should you feel guilty for smiling or laughing or not crying enough? We cannot fall into that trap of judging what we are going through and how we're grieving. And I don't know who it was, but one of our recent guests mentioned that grieving like they do in the movie theaters, how are in movies, how it's a very simple way that they show grief every single time. Yeah. When in reality, we grieve so much different. So we can't, we have to be careful to not compare ourselves to what we think grieving is supposed to look like. And again, like I just said, a lot of it comes from what we see in film and movies. And so we have to be careful of that. Yep. Point number 6. There just isn't one way to grieve. You need to be compassionate with yourself, your grief, and how you're feeling. We often discount what our experiences are and tell ourselves that we shouldn't feel that way. There's a lot of feedback that we receive about what we should do that often impacts our ability to just feel and grieve. Remember that there isn't one way to grieve. You're going to feel your grief in your own way and time. It is probably not going to fall on the same timeline as other people. Our reactions will be impacted by a variety of factors, such as how supported we feel by the people in our life, the relationship we had with the person we lost, and the context of what is going on in our life and in the world. Whatever your reaction, it is important to allow yourself to feel the emotions that arise. It's when we're shut down and we pretend that it didn't happen, and we suppress and inhibit our own emotional experiences and the emotional experiences associated with traumatic loss, that we may suffer even more. In instances of multiple loss, be aware of whether your grief and life stressors exceed your capacity to cope. Licensed social worker Lisa Williams prefers the term grief overload or cumulative grief or bereavement overload, which are often used interchangeably, because she believes that this is the central issue for multiple losses. Cumulative grief as a term suggests that the issue is simply the number of losses that is the challenge. In reality, though, the real issue is the overload that occurs when someone's stressors exceed their coping capacity. And when, why, and how that happens varies dramatically from griever to griever, she says. So There's another point that I'm going to mention, but first, Taj, I want to give you the floor to see if there's anything you want to add or comment on regarding all of that. Young man, you are mic'd. What kind of profession? Muted. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Taj. You're still muted. Now you're good. Okay, now you're good.
Grief overload as opposed to the cumulative one that I was having problems saying. In that, like, grief overload's a good word as well in that, because yeah, I think that's an easier word to say than cumulative or whatever.
I like that. Okay, then there is one more point we are going to mention before we close out the show, and that is to learn. It's important that we try and learn from prior losses. Multiple losses can be devastating. In the early period of grieving, it's hard to see past that period of intense sadness, but prior experiences of loss can also serve as a way to draw on hope and healing and a belief in a positive future. We need to remind people that they have survived and they have made it through grief before. They know more than they think they do about how they navigate grief and what they value, and that they can use those skills in facing the same loss. If you experience grief overload, don't be afraid to ask for help or reach out for support. It can be hard to do, but you'll never regret giving yourself the care you deserve when facing a difficult time. We want to thank journalist Katie Reilly for opening up about her personal losses in this essay and normalizing conversations about grief and loss. Again, we will link this article in the show notes for you to read or share with others. I also saw that Caitlin highlighted this link. I don't know if that makes it clickable wherever you're at, but if you want to also click it through the thread, the chat, you can do so on Facebook. But yeah, I want to also, on behalf of Taj and the foundation, thank Katie for the wonderful article. It was an important article and one that we need to be discussing more. Here is a copy of the article, How to Handle an Overload of Grief. You can go to vox.com, and you can also go to www.katiecreilly.com to read more of her work. Taj, any final things you want to talk about or discuss before we close out the show?
No. I always learn, in general. So this was an interesting topic because I really hadn't thought about overload of grief in that way, and in terms of not even back to back, but just in general, just multiple grief, multiple losses in that way. So this is just, I was very fascinated by it.
Yeah, it was solid. I just want to, before we close, I just want to remind everyone who may be going through it that your situation is unique. Dealing with the loss, there's no one. Some people often will say, there's a statement that millions have went through this before, you'll be fine, and although millions have went through it and have been able to get through it, I don't necessarily subscribe to that. It can help to learn about other people's situations and how what they went through, but all of our situations are unique. We're all different people. The way we lost our loved ones is all unique. It's all different. So we cannot just say, this is the easy solution for what you're going through.
Yeah.
But I do want to make sure everyone understands that you can get through it, and it will just take time and effort, but it is something you can do. It may be harder for you than the other person. It may be easier, but whatever it is, it's your path and it's your road and it's your journey. So respect it and know that you can and will get through it. You'll have hard days, you'll have tough times, you'll have difficult moments, but everything, I truly believe everything will be all good for you in the end. You'll find that happiness, you'll find that spark, you'll find that reason for joyful living. You'll find all of it. It may not be on the timeline you wanted or thought it would be, but it will happen. And that needs to be known, because oftentimes people get so discouraged that it hasn't happened for them yet They want to give up. They want to throw in the towel. And it doesn't just take a loss to put you in that mood. It could be a loss of a job, a loss of a spouse, a loss of a friend. It could be anything, just feeling down. The one thing I would suggest is to practice gratitude. Taj says that all the time during, I used to struggle with my uncle's birthday or my mother's birthday, after they had passed. And Taj helped me in understanding how to celebrate that person and flipping that difficult, sad day into one that's enjoyable. Is it completely enjoyable for me at the same level as Taj? Probably not, but it's not nearly as difficult at the same time. Yeah. So and this is something that I've learned just a couple of years ago. This isn't a tactic that I've had in my sleeve for decades. I mean, it's been almost 30 years since I lost my mother. So I'm still learning and still understanding how to process it. And I just felt it was important to talk directly to anyone going through that type of a loss, to let them know you're going to learn for the next decades on how to heal and how to deal with it. There was a great comment from Tracy who says, I lost my brother when I was 19 and it still hurts to this day. I'm 56. This is even longer than our loss. And it's still, I appreciate this comment, Tracy. I appreciate the openness. Yep. And I think it's important to share. It doesn't need to be taken with a negative spin of things will never get better, because I truly feel, and I don't want to put words into Tracy's mouth, but I'll put it for me in my situation. I'm in a better place than I was when a year after, the 2 years or 3 years after when I lost my mother. I'm understanding more about life. I'm respecting the stages of life. And a lot of that goes with the ability to desire, heal and understanding of life. So that's my little rant. That's the word I was looking for. Rant sounds negative, but that's
rant is negative.
I know. Is it though?
That's my
Is rant negative? Are you sure on that?
I have never heard rant be positive, but maybe that's me.
Hold on. Rant is to speak or shout at length in a wild, impassioned way. A spell of ranting, a tirade. It's funny because it doesn't say it in the definition, but both examples are definitely negative.
They're not positive.
All right, we don't know.
Say that's your soapbox or whatever.
Exactly. A couple of things I want to highlight. Jennifer says, yes, about creating visual art. I made my first sketch yesterday, and I have not even attempted to draw in 30 years. Do what best suits your needs. Jennifer says, travel has helped me deal with grief. It actually made me miss them because I wish they were with me. But I remember they are with me, and I'm doing what they would want me to do.
Nice. Yeah.
Angie has an important tidbit about counselors. We have to remember counselors are people too, and this is why they are not perfect. I think that's very cool and a great approach to see it, Angie. No one's perfect. They could be having a difficult day or difficult moment or difficult phase in their lives. Doesn't mean you should just hang with them and take the abuse, but we have to respect that they may be going through situations themselves.
I would like to say that real quick too. Just that's a great point that Angie put. And just people are human in that way, and everyone deals with grief differently. And someone you think you could lean on and think that that person's always been my best friend, or that person's always been my role model or my parent or whatever, they might not be capable of giving you what you need during the grief process in that way. My dad, for instance, wasn't. He was going through his own thing. So my dad has always been I looked him up as strength, but he was very vulnerable at that point. So I couldn't rely on my dad in a way for that grief in that way. So people are human, and so you have to sometimes find other avenues and other communities or other friends in that way. I made a good friend who had gone through something similar and was able to kind of guide me through certain things. So you never know where you're going to get that kinship.
Suzanne says, I went on a tangent. Is tangent better than rant?
Yeah, it is. Tangent. Yeah, it's like a tangent's like off topic kind of thing.
Okay. Everyone seems to be okay with the word tangent. So that's what I meant.
Everyone's agreeing on tangent.
I love it. See, we're a community here. It's all good. And then before we end, Taj, Jack Love says, really quick and random, is that the Three Stooges on the bottom beside the video game machine?
Yes, it is.
I never noticed that before.
Yes, it is.
And it is. Taj,
Three Stooges over there too. Like there's the Three Stooges and the what's it called? Those little
Funko Pops.
Fungo Pops. There's Three Stooges and Fungo Pop. Michael Fungo Pops.
Taj, where did you get those statues?
The statues? Oh, I think.
Did you get them with Uncle Michael?
No, I have those in the back. That I do have. Really, yeah.
Did you give him some?
Huh?
Why am I feeling a connection between those statues and Uncle Michael? Did you get him a set?
No, I have the statues you're thinking of was always in my room. Those weren't always in my. Those are newer, in that set. The statues you're thinking of, I can show you off camera. Those are like the ones we've had for.
Hey, I don't
30,
know.
40 years.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know what it was, but that's something was connecting me. But all good. All right, this was a long show, but it was an important show. It was a good show. I want to say on behalf of my eldest brother Taj, again, and the foundation, a big thank you to Katie Reilly for the essay, How to Handle an Overload of Grief. Again, it's in the show notes if you want to check it out. I think that is it, Taj. I think I've hit everything we were supposed to hit. That's it. All right. If you guys want more information on our foundation, go visit www.ddjf.org. Another reminder, if you haven't already, to join our official Facebook group. We're very close to 500 members. It was a goal of ours, and we would love to hit that sooner than later to support many of you out there. Until next time, until next week, we love you guys, and take care of yourself.